a world that often rewards the loudest and the most ruthless, there lived a humble stonecutter named Elias, who spent his days carving beautiful statues for a city that barely noticed his existence. Elias lived by a simple, unshakable philosophy. Do good, have good. His neighbors often mocked him, pointing out that while he spent his extra hours fixing broken fences for the elderly or sharing his meager bread with street dogs, the greedy merchants in the town square were getting richer by cheating their customers. They told Elias that kindness was a luxury for the weak, and that the universe didn't keep a ledger of good deeds. But Elias would only smile, his eyes reflecting a peace that money could never buy, and replied that the harvest of a seed is rarely seen on the day it is planted. The logic of Elias's life was built on the principle of spiritual virtue. He believed that every act of kindness was a frequency sent out into the void, and eventually, that frequency would have to find its way back to its source. One winter, a devastating plague struck the city, followed by a famine that turned neighbors into enemies. The wealthy merchants locked their iron gates, hiding behind their gold, while the poor suffered in the freezing streets. Elias, despite having very little, turned his small workshop into a sanctuary. He spent his life savings on grain and wood, keeping a fire burning for anyone who was cold and a bowl of soup for anyone who was hungry. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because his soul could not breathe in the atmosphere of indifference. The vibe shift occurred when the king's only son fell gravely ill while traveling through the region incognito. The prince's carriage had broken down in the snow, and his royal guards, desperate and starving, knocked on the doors of the wealthy mansions, only to be turned away by those who feared the disease. Finally, they reached the humble wooden door of Elias. Without asking for their names or their status, Elias brought them in. He gave his own bed to the shivering young man and spent 3 sleepless nights using ancient herbal remedies his mother had taught him to break the prince's fever. He shared his last loaf of bread with the guards, treating them not as soldiers, but as brothers in distress. The solution to the world's coldness is the realization that your character is your only true currency. When the prince finally recovered and revealed his identity, the city was stunned. The king arrived with a caravan of gold and soldiers, ready to punish those who had closed their doors and reward the one who had opened his. But when the king offered Elias a chest of jewels and a position at the palace, Elias refused. He told the king that the good he had received was the sight of the prince walking again, and that true wealth is the ability to look in the mirror and see a man who hasn't sold his soul for silver. The motivation for you today is to understand that do good, have good is not a transaction. It is a transformation. You don't do good to get a reward. You do good because it makes you the kind of person that the universe wants to protect. Elias's kindness had created a vibe shift in the entire city. Seeing his selflessness, the citizens began to open their own doors, realizing that they had been starving for connection more than they had been starving for food. The barrier of greed was broken, not by a sword, but by a bowl of soup given in the dark. The logic of your destiny is that the seeds of kindness you plant in your winters will become the shade you sit under in your summers. You have been failing to find happiness because you've been looking for it in what you can take from the world, rather than what you can contribute to it. The story of Elias ends with the city building a statue in his honor, not of a king or a general, but of a simple stonecutter holding out a hand to a stranger. He proved that, while the word life is small, the act of living is great when it is fueled by a heart that expects nothing and gives everything. The vibe shift is complete when you realize that every person you help is a gift you are giving to your future self. Success is the quiet, heart-touching certainty that the world is a better place because you are in it. Take your kindness, take your small acts of grace, and throw them into the world like stones into a pond. The ripples will eventually reach the shore of your own life. Do good, not because the world is good, but because you are. The king stood in the humble workshop, his royal robes dusting the floor where Elias had spent 40 years carving stone, and he realized that he was the one who was poor. He saw that, while he owned the land, Elias owned the peace of the land. The logic of do good, have good, is that your internal state eventually dictates your external reality. You have been failing to find true fulfillment because you have been waiting for the world to be good to you before you decide to be good to the world. You are treating your character like a transaction, but Elias treated it like a transformation. The solution to your frustration is to realize that the universe is a giant echo chamber. If you scream scarcity and greed, the mountains will scream it back at you. But if you whisper kindness and service, the wind will carry that same melody back to your doorstep when you least expect it. Elias Elias understood that the vibe shift is the moment you stop asking what's in it for me and start asking what can I put into this. The motivation for you at this very second is to understand that your small acts of grace, the way you treat a waiter, the way you listen to a friend, the way you help a stranger are the invisible threads weaving the safety net for your own future. The barrier does not exist because kindness is a universal language that even the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Julian and Master Thorn once said that the only thing you take with you when you leave this earth is the love you gave away. Elias' story continues as he used the king's resources not to buy a mansion, but to build a school for the children of the city, teaching them that the word life is small, but its meaning is expanded every time you hold out a hand to another. He proved that the person who gives is always wealthier than the person who receives because the giver has enough to spare, while the receiver is still in need. The vibe shift is complete when you realize that doing good is the only way to have good in your soul. Success is not a destination where you finally get to be selfish. It is a platform where you finally get to be selfless. The story of Elias ends with him sitting in the sun, surrounded by the people he helped, realizing that his small life had become a great legend because he dared to be kind when it was hard. Take your heart, take your hands, and take your do-good philosophy and turn it into a reality that the world cannot ignore. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the gardener of your own karma. The seeds are in your hand. What will you plant today? Elias sat in the garden of the school he had built, watching the children play, and he realized that the good he had received was not the gold in his pockets, but the laughter in the air. He understood that most people fail because they are waiting for a big good to happen to them, but they refuse to do the small good for others. They want the forest without planting the seed. The logic of the universe is that it measures the weight of your heart, not the size of your house. You have been failing to find true satisfaction because you have been treating your kindness like a currency you spend only when you expect a return. But Elias treated it like a fragrance he wore simply because he loved the smell. The solution to your constant feeling of not having enough is to realize that having good is a state of being, not a state of owning. When you do good, you shift your own internal frequency from a place of lack to a place of abundance. Julian and Elias discovered that the vibe shift is the moment you realize that you are the source of the light you've been looking for. The motivation for you at this exact second is to understand that the world is not a cold place. It is a mirror reflecting your own coldness back at you. If you want warmth, you must be the fire. If you want grace, you must be the giver. The barrier does not exist, because the wall between you and your blessings is made of the bricks of your own selfishness. Every time you do a good deed without a witness, you take a brick out of that wall. The story of Elias reaches its peak when the old merchants who once mocked him came to him in their old age, broken and lonely despite their gold. Elias did not turn them away. He gave them a place at his table. He proved that the ultimate good you can have is the ability to forgive those who were never good to you. This is the highest level of the vibe shift, where you become so great in spirit that the smallness of others cannot touch you. The vibe shift is complete when you realize that do good, have good is the only law that never fails. Success is the quiet, heart-touching knowledge that you have left every person you met a little bit better than you found them. Take your life, take your 4 letters, and take your do-good philosophy and turn it into a legend that will be told long after you are gone. You are not a grain of sand in the desert. You are the rain that makes the desert bloom. The seeds are planted, the echo is returning, and the reality of your goodness is the only thing that will remain. The final realization for Elias was that the good he did was not a sacrifice he made for others, but a shield he built for himself. He understood that when you do good, you are actually purifying the air you have to breathe. Most people fail because they think of kindness as a loss. They think if they give, they have less. But the logic of the vibe shift is that in the realm of the spirit, you only keep what you give away. You have been feeling empty because you have been hoarding your energy, your time, and your lao like a man trying to catch the wind in a jar. The solution to your constant anxiety is to realize that having good is the natural gravity of doing good. Julian and Elias discovered that the universe is not a judge sitting on a throne, but a mirror reflecting your own frequency. If you are stingy with your help, the world will be stingy with its opportunities. If you are cruel with your words, the world will be harsh with its judgments. The motivation for you at this very second is to stop being a consumer of life and start being a contributor. The moment you shift your focus from what can I get to How can I serve? The barrier of scarcity vanishes because you have tapped into an infinite supply of purpose. The story of Elias concludes with him standing on the balcony of the school he built, looking out at a city that had been transformed by the simple spark of one man's character. You realize that the word life is small, but its reality is as vast as the kindness you pour into it. He didn't die a wealthy man in gold, but he died a rich man in stories, in smiles, and in the hearts of children who would grow up to be better because he existed. Success is the quiet, heart-touching certainty that you have paid your rent for being on this planet by making it a little warmer for the person standing next to you. The vibe shift is complete when you realize that do good, have good is not a fairy tale, it is a law of physics. You are not a victim of a cold world. You are the fire that is meant to warm you. Take your hands, take your heart, take your 4 letters, and turn them into a legacy of grace that time cannot erase. The seeds have become a forest. The echo has become a symphony. And the reality of your goodness is the only thing that truly matters. Now, go out there and be the reason someone believes in the goodness of humanity again. The legacy of Elias reached its ultimate resonance when the king, now an old man, returned to the stonecutter's workshop to ask one final question. Elias, I have given away kingdoms and conquered lands, yet I am still haunted by the fear of losing it all. You have given away your bread and your strength, yet you sit here as if you own the stars. Tell me, how can a man who has nothing actually have everything? Elias looked at his weathered hands, the same hands that had carved stone, and fed the hungry, and replied that the word life is small because it is a vessel, and if you fill that vessel with the needs of others, it becomes a well that never runs dry. He explained that the logic of do good, have good, is that the having is not an external collection of things, but an internal state of being. You have been failing because you have been trying to fill a spiritual hole with material things, like a man trying to stop a leak in a dam with paper. The solution to your emptiness is to realize that your purpose is not to be successful, but to be a blessing. The vibe shift occurred in that moment of silence between the king and the stonecutter. It was the realization that the universe does not reward you for what you have. It rewards you for who you are when no one is looking. Julian and Master Thorn once said that the only thing you truly own is the impact you leave on the souls of others. The motivation for you at this very second is to understand that every time you choose kindness over convenience, you are depositing into a celestial bank account that can never be frozen or stolen. You are not just doing good. You are building an unshakable identity that the world cannot touch. The barrier does not exist because the wall of your ego has been dismantled by the power of your empathy. Elias's journey ends with the quiet, heart-touching certainty that the good he had was the peace in his chest and the love in the eyes of everyone he met. He proved that the person who lives for themselves is a small person in a big world, but the person who lives for others is a great person in a world that has no boundaries. The vibe shift is complete. The echo has returned home. Success is the radical understanding that the more you pour out, the more you are filled. Take your life, take your heart, and take your do-good philosophy, and turn it into a frequency that lifts the entire world. You are the rain, you are the fire, and you are the reason the sun rises on a better world today. The final whisper of Elias's legend was not found in the statues built in his honor, but in the quiet change of the city. Ese heartbeat. He understood that most people fail because they are looking for good to arrive in a golden carriage, while good is actually waiting to be found in the dust of everyday service. The logic of the vibe shift is that the universe doesn't reward you for what you want. It rewards you for what you provide. You have been failing to find your breakthrough because you have been treating your potential like a secret. You are hiding until the world pays you first. The solution to your stagnant life is the realization that doing good is the only way to prime the pump of having good. Julian and Elias discovered that if you want a fire to give you heat, you must first give it the wood. You have been sitting in the cold, begging for warmth, while holding the fuel behind your back. The motivation for you at this exact second is to stop being a spiritual beggar and start being a spiritual billionaire. A billionaire doesn't worry about giving away $1 because they know the source is infinite. When you do good without fear, you prove to the universe that you are connected to the infinite source of all greatness. The barrier does not exist because the wall between your current struggle and your future success is made of the good you haven't done yet. Every act of integrity, every moment of patience, and every silent sacrifice is a sledgehammer hitting that wall. The story of Elias reaches its eternal conclusion with the realization that the word life is small because it is a single breath. But the word good is great because it is the oxygen that makes that breath worth taking. He died with nothing in his hands but everything in his soul, proving that the man who lives for himself is a small character in a big world, but the man who lives for others is a great soul that the world can no longer contain. The vibe shift is complete when you realize that do good, have good is the only contract. The universe never breaks. Success is the radical, heart-touching certainty that you have become a person of value in a world of crisis. Take your heart, take your small acts of grace, and turn them into a frequency that shifts the entire planet. You are the gardener, you are the seed, and you are the harvest. The echo has returned, the circle is closed, and the reality of your goodness is the only thing that will echo in eternity. The story of Elias the stonecutter reaches its final, absolute silence. He passed away, not in a palace of gold, but in the garden of the school he built, surrounded by the very people whose lives he had mended with his quiet kindness. When they closed his eyes, they didn't find a man who was tired of the world, but a man who had become one with the world. The logic of his departure was the final vibe shift, proving that you take your possessions to the grave. You only take the frequency of the good you sent out. The ultimate truth of do good, have good, is that kindness is the only investment that never The boomerang effect. If you throw stones of malice, you live in a world of broken glass. If you throw seeds of grace, you will walk through a forest of peace, the eternal harvest. You don't do good to get something. You do good to become someone. The having is the character you build, which no thief can steal and no economy can crash. The silent power, the greatest good, is often the one done when no one is watching, because that is when you prove to the universe that your integrity is not for sale. Your time is coming. Keep believing. Keep fighting. Don't just watch. Go out and prove them wrong. Thank you for being part of the journey. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.